Welcome back to the Football League Paper Podcast. My name is Matt Badcock, and as always, I'm joined by FLP editor John Lyons and chief writer Chris Dunlavy. Chaps, how are we?
All good, thank you.
All good, thanks, fellas.
Good. It feels like it's never been away, John. The EFL season back with a bang on Saturday.
Yeah. Well, it's brilliant when you get that first weekend, and obviously the glut of games and goals on on that first sort of weekend of the season, and you tend to get obviously a few favourites that you thought were sort of bankers sort of get turned over, and you wonder if it was just a one-off or is there something more to it. So it's great to get back underway.
Chris, your EFL fantasy team got off to a flyer. Were you happy with your opening day show?
It was a bit of a one-man show, it must be said. Because I captained Will Lankshear at Middlesbrough, and he came up trumps with a couple of goals. We're going to talk about him a bit. The rest, I think they were still in pre-season, the rest of them.
Well, I was fuming when I saw that you captained him. Absolutely fuming. Let's start with Will Lankshear, because he did get those 2 goals from Middlesbrough. Christian in that Lincoln win, come from behind. I mean, for a period of time, Lincoln thinking, this is an amazing sort of story that they had last year, getting up to the Championship, and then they're going to Middlesbrough. Obviously, got to the playoff final last year, and then to be leading for so long. But turns out £10 million from Spurs was well spent. Certainly on the opening weekend show. I think he haven't looked at the highlights. He could have even had more. He hit the woodwork as well, didn't he? But got off to a great start, Will Lankshear, there at Middlesbrough.
He did. I think Middlesbrough were a bit surprised to be suddenly getting shelled. It was probably not something they were used to last season, really, and that sort of opening half hour or so, they look a bit shocked. But great goal from Adam Reach as well. One of the former Borough man, someone I've spoken to quite a lot over the years. So I was pleased for him. But yeah, it was in the end. There was the 2 goals from Will Lankshear that got them out of it. And I think if you watch the goals, I mean, it's exactly what they didn't have. I think everybody watching Middlesbrough last year said, decent at the back, they had a great midfield, especially when Hayden Hackney was there. But you looked up front, and compared to everybody else up that top end of the table, with all due respect to David Strelec, I just think there was a yawning gap, wasn't there, at the top where a 20-goal striker might be, and. You could see it last year. They created a lot of chances, but they didn't put a lot of them away. And I think those, the 2 goals Lancashire scored, they were combined distance of about 3 yards, I think. So one was a sort of instinctive sticking his foot out from a shot that got deflected. Second one was a tap in on the line from a cross. The other one was a little improvised, one they hit the bar with was a little improvised finish. And I think you just saw in that, you just saw, even aside from all the other stuff he does, which is, holding the ball up really well and bullying defenders with his size and that sort of thing. I think just those sorts of finishes, those scrappy goals, getting in the 6-yard box, sniffing things out. It was exactly what Middlesbrough didn't have last year. So it was a lot of money, but I think you can understand completely why they spent it when you watch that performance.
Yeah, John, we talked last week about the importance of getting off to a good start for certain clubs and new managers and all that kind of thing. But I guess the same goes for strikers as well, doesn't it? If you can get 2 on your home debut in front of your new fans, it just kind of sets your tone right for the off.
Yeah, and obviously that was 2 in obviously the first league game, and obviously he'd scored the week before in the only goal against Wrexham in the Carabao Cup as well. So sort of 3 and 2. So he's hit the ground running, and he's shown that he can be the man to finish off those chances, and it's obviously good for those for his teammates to know if they get him the ball in those kind of areas, and he'll be there to finish them off, and perhaps what they were lacking last season. So yeah, it's looking promising for him, because with all goal scorers, you want to get those early goals in the season and get your confidence up.
Yeah, especially when it costs 10 million quid.
Yeah, that does help. But it's not when you've got those sort of price tag on you. It is a strange kind of thing, isn't it? Because now no one talks about that now. But when we've seen with strikers in the past, when they don't get off to a good mark, the price tag just gets hung around the neck straight away, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, one of the best examples, sort of, there was at Sheffield United, wasn't there? their, what was he called, the lad from Liverpool, the Ryan Brewster. I mean, it just hung over him for so long, didn't it? Because he was bought before, he barely kicked the ball, and he costed 20 million or so, and he didn't score for about a year, and it just becomes this sort of massive millstone around your neck. So yeah, to get it, like you say, if you don't score, it's all anybody talks about, and if you do, it's a bargain. So yeah, fair play to him.
Yeah, because with Ryan Brewster, I remember seeing him playing. I think he was on loan at Swansea from Liverpool, I think, and he looked brilliant. But I don't think there was much. Yeah, I don't think there was much pressure on him then, much expectation on him. So perhaps he went out and sort of played with that sort of greater level of freedom, and then obviously when he had the big money move, it didn't happen for him, and the pressure probably just grew and grew.
Yeah, frustrating. John, do you think Lincoln will? Obviously, it was a defeat, but do you think they can? And again, early days, but do you think they'll take quite a bit from that? That opening game.
Yeah, well, I think Chris Cohen and Tom Shaw sort of afterwards were sort of quite sort of upbeat because they felt the team had shown that they can compete against one of the top teams from last season. So yeah, obviously it was gutting for them to have lost it in the way they did right at the end. But I think I think it will give them a measure of confidence that they can hold their own and compete with some of the well established and top teams in the division.
Yeah, Chris, it was a interesting weekend for the relegated sides. See, Wolves kicked the season off on Friday night with that 2-2 draw against Blackburn. West Ham 2-2 with Burnley on Sunday. We probably thought they were over the line with 10 minutes to go, and then Burnley managed to turn it around. But that's again, as we were talking about last week, a little bit of a reminder of what it's going to be about. And obviously West Ham and Burnley were both relegated sides, but it's not going to be easy for any of them this year.
No, well, I think Wolves were the best example of that, weren't they? Because I think most people would have put money on them beating Blackburn, who struggled last season, but they looked like what they were, Wolves, really. I mean, they looked like a team who've not played at the level, who didn't really know what to expect, and got a bit sort of caught cold by the intensity of it, to be perfectly honest. So I think they'll improve. You could see the quality was there. You could see the talent they had in the team, but I do think they might be in for a kind of slow start while they get to grips with it. In terms of the West Ham Burnley game, I've sort of written about it in my columnist this week a little bit, and I think it was one of those, wasn't it? Nuno's got this reputation for being a bit of a defensive manager, and I don't know if you watched the second half, but it was sort of chalk and cheese. West Ham went ahead, and then second half was a bit like watching England in the World Cup. They just sort of started defending for their lives for no apparent reason, and even Burnley might have got those 2 goals later on, but they could have scored another 2 or 3 in that second half. They hit the bar, that one cleared off the line. West Ham were just hacking stuff away really for big parts of that second half, and you thought, well, when you were so on top in the first half, how has this happened? And I think it will be. It's hard. It's first game of the season. They're a relegated team. Confidence is low, but I think there's a reservation. We touched on it last week about Nuno and his defensive style and the fact that he's quite a safety first manager, and you can't probably I don't think you can afford to have too many performances like that before people will turn and start demanding a bit more. I don't think they can really do that in the Championship. So that's a challenge for him to get them confident, to get them able to cut loose and put teams away really, because that's what they should have done, and instead they let Burnley back into it. Yeah,
John, do you think that is kind of the hangover from a relegation, where it is a bit like, oh, actually we're winning a game of football, and this is it suddenly feels everything sort of feels much bigger than it probably is possibly, and you have to start overthinking it a little bit.
Yeah, perhaps. And I was listening to an interview with Nuno at the weekend, and he was saying that I think that the interview was making the point that you are probably going to have more possession, more of the ball in the Championship. Will you be changing your style of play? And he was making the point that he would be looking to see his team being a bit more progressive, and having more of the ball and doing more with it. So a little bit frustrating that they obviously didn't sort of take heed of that at the weekend. But I think obviously Burnley were a team who came down with them. So obviously maybe against some of the teams that they will feel as though they've got more control over, they will be looking to sort of dominate the game, and perhaps that's where the new signing Arne Engels, £22 million or championship record signing, perhaps that's where he sort of maybe slightly fits into it, where they're going to be trying to sort of pass it and pass the move and play a bit more the old West Ham way a little bit, and play some more sort of skillful, more attractive kind of football.
Chris, a funny result for Southampton on Sunday against Watford, 2-1 defeat. We sort of obviously know how last season finished, and they would have been nice to, from their point of view, they would have wanted to get off to a far more positive start than that. But obviously, from bits I've seen, didn't look like they played great either.
No, well, both the goals were mistakes, really. In fact, both the goals were just Southampton players passing to Watford players. So, not much you can do about that, really, if you're a manager or a coach. But it's it's classic, isn't it? Yeah, I sort of tipped them as a bit of a dark horse for the title last week, and they turned in a stinker like that on the first day of the season. But it's a bit like we said about West Ham. It's hard to know how much of a hangover they'll be from last year, from what happened, and all that sort of stuff. But also, I think Watford are a mad team, because they're a bit of a wild card every season, because you look at their team sheet and it's always different. And you're like, who's that? Who's he? Where's he come from? And it's just, I imagine it's very similar for the opposition. You never quite know season to season what Watford team you're going to get. And they actually were really, they looked really sharp. They looked really, they had some good players in there. And I think maybe they caught Southampton a little bit cold as well.
Yeah, definitely. Like you say, early days. It's hard to tell. And in this world, everyone sort of wants to jump to quick, hot reactions, hot takes on everything that happens. So, John, are QPR going to win the league? They're top of the table.
Well, I wouldn't put too much money on it. I don't think even QPR fans expect them to win the league. So, but obviously, it was a great start for them. I think to win 3-1 at Portsmouth is a cracking result. And I think the Portsmouth manager, John Mousinho, was obviously, he was a bit sort of mystified as to what happened to his team. They were 1-0 out, they were looking good and playing good football, and then sort of QPR have hit them with sort of 3 goals out of nowhere, and it was kind of almost sort of game over. So, great start for QPR, and obviously Ilias Chair got a couple of those goals. And when I've seen him play, when he's at his peak form, he is a top championship player. He's had sort of terrible run of injuries of late, but if they can get him sort of playing back to anywhere near his best, he can be a real bright spark in the championship.
Yeah, definitely. Well, one thing we were going to talk about, Chris, is Jordan James, obviously on loan at Leicester last year, and there seems to be a bit of a battle. I suppose it shows the quality of the player and the impact he did have last year, that Middlesbrough were interested in. West Ham, Wolves, Burnley, all sort of a bit of talk about him. Yeah,
well, I mean, I spoke to our columnist Guy Branston last year, who's an agent, a bit of a talent spotter, and he reckoned I think he anticipated that you might see a few promoted clubs or kind of lower end Premier League clubs having a look at Jordan James after what he did for Leicester last year. So it's not that surprising that all the best clubs in the Premier League want him, because that Leicester team last year was an absolute horror show. I don't think practically anybody could hold their head up and say that had a good season, whereas he was head and shoulders above everyone. Did he get in the Championship Team of the Year in the end? I don't think he did he? But he must have been.
I think so.
Must have been close. But yeah, he's just exactly. If you had to put together a Championship midfielder, like your ideal Championship midfielder, he'd kind of be it. He's got that sort of engine to get up and down. He can tackle and put a foot in. He can get forward and score goals. Why wouldn't you want him? Why wouldn't you want him? So yeah, I don't think there's a team in the Championship you wouldn't improve.
Yeah, definitely. Well, first week out of the way. Lots of interesting games this weekend, isn't there, John? With I think West Ham, Charlton, one of the standouts there. It's the next couple of weeks where it will, we probably will see sort of a few mad results flying off.
Yeah, and I think it's obviously it's difficult to read too much into one game. So after a few more matches, we'll get a little bit of better idea of who's sort of settling in and what have you. And obviously the other factor is the the end of the transfer window as well, because everything is a little bit up in the air until we get to the end of August, start of September, and then everyone knows exactly what they've got to play with. So we've got some clubs there who will no doubt be looking to do business, or clubs who will be maybe looking to do a bit more business than they thought they would have to do maybe after those first few games. So you have got that little bit of a license to to see how you get on and see if you need to make a bit of a panic buy or not.
Yeah, that's why I'd close it up before the start of the season. Just get on with it. Listen, now what you got is what you run with. But
well, I think the Premier League, they did try that, didn't they? I think the Premier League sort of tried that a few years ago, and no one in Europe seemed to want to follow suit, so they quickly sort of
go back
down again when they realised that they were just making things more difficult for themselves, potentially losing out on players and deals.
Yeah, it's very well. There are sort of windows do stay open, don't they? After this window, which is kind of a bit strange. So I think sometimes clubs sort of breathe a bit of a sigh of relief that they're some of the best players are sticking around. And then, oh no, the Turkish league or whatever it is, if they're keeping their window open, they can sign whenever they want, and you sort of get blindsided. Let's Chris, let's come on to Leicester, because again we talked about them in depth on last week's pod. They had this big Midlands derby with Notts County, drew 1-1. See, they were leading, weren't they? But drew 1-1. Yes, I think kind of what you said last week maybe came to fruition a little bit. Not quite sure what to expect.
Yes, I think Russell Martin probably answered no questions in that game. I don't know if you saw. I don't know if you saw the highlights or the game or whatever. But did you? Where was it the first minute where it gets passed back to the keeper and someone charges him down and crossbar with a tackle. So, I mean, and there you have it, right? There you have what's going to happen to Leicester in every game this season while they're passing around at the back. And yeah, you had the stats as well. The stats were like, I think they had sort of 60% possession and an XG of 0.63. So there you go again. So yeah, I'm not meaning to knock Russell Martin, but as John said last week, right? If it is going to work, it's going to take a while, and I think that performance from Leicester that you saw there was kind of archetypal. They're going to have to score a few goals because they're going to make a lot of mistakes. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them draw a few games along the way.
And also, John, they've been losing a lot of football games for the last couple of years, haven't they? So it's not, there's also they're going to be that. The fans are going to feel that. I know if even some of the players, the fans are going to sort of feel that sort of stress, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think the general feeling was that they perhaps weren't ready for Notts County sort of up and at them approach and sort of getting stuck into them and not giving them time on the ball. So as much as obviously we've talked quite a bit about Leicester, I think we have to give Notts County a bit of credit as well, because obviously they've stepped up a division. And they made a really good start there. Obviously, for them to get that draw was really positive for them. And I think Martin Patterson, was saying afterwards that the players felt disappointed. They hadn't sort of won the game. So obviously, a massive crowd there as well. So it sort of bodes well for them. It was a great start for them in back in League One.
Yeah, great place when it's rocking. They enjoyed covering lots of games down the years. Chris, have you seen the video that Luton have put out of Jack Wiltshire's halftime team talk? And you could sort of see and feel all the frustration. He's kind of saying, "This is what I've been telling you for the last 6 weeks," right? And then it's what we've gone and done. Basically, been hit on the counter attack, like I've been telling you we would be. Luton's game against Reading, 3-1 down at halftime. Obviously, Jack Marriott whacked in a hat-trick, but he also did say we can turn this around, it's still there for us, and it was, and they ran out 4-3 winners in a kind of a totally bonkers game. 96th minute winner, Gideon Kadua, hit the crossbar, it's all just total sort of chaos, isn't it? And kind of what we love. A great win in the end for Luton on the opening day, 4-3 at Reading.
It was like an end of season game, wasn't it, rather than the first game of the season. But yeah, well, funnily enough, I haven't seen that video, but I think if you watched it, you knew they'd got a rocket, hadn't it? It was obvious because they came out that second half and got the 2 goals, And it was clear that these words had, because they just had that bit more. You could see them in the first half, didn't you? When they sort of lost the ball and people kind of go out, like it was all of a sudden much more intense, much more focused. So you could see that Jack Wilshere obviously said something. But yeah, it was one of those games in it where it just kind of goes a bit mad, and everybody just sort of all goes all guns blazing. You should be a bit more like that sometimes, but no, it was they needed that as well, Luton, because after again, a bit like Leicester, the seasons they've had recently, coming down from the Premier League, coming down again, kind of underwhelming last season really, and the last thing they needed was a defeat on the first day of the season. So yeah, I think for them, momentum's huge. They've got to try and put together a run of results and get back to, because that's what they've lacked right through really. Even last season, they never really got a great run of results going. If they can do that, then they've got the quality to get promoted from that league, no problem.
Yeah, and John Redden are probably thinking, what on earth's happened there? We've been sort of cruising. Jack Marriott, hat-trick in the first half. Great opening to the season, and then coming sort of 5 o'clock, they've lost the game. Frustrating one for them.
Yeah, it might take a little while to get over that one as well. Home game as well, and you're 3-1 up, and you sort of lose it like that, especially right at the end as well, which was another sort of kick in the teeth. I suppose the silver lining has to be obviously Jack Marriott's hat-trick, because he looked really, really sharp there, and if he keeps playing like that, then they're bound to win some games. I think the first goal as well, was it a back pass, and he's just nipped in and got in front of the keeper, and you thought he was a defender there as well. You maybe thought he was second favourite or even third favourite to get to the ball, and he's been quite brave as well, because he could have got really, really clattered there as well. So he looks super sharp. So that's going to give them a bit of optimism, but obviously they've got to shut the back door as well.
Yeah, definitely. John, we've talked lots and lots about Andy Woodman and Bromley and what a good job he's done. Obviously, I know someone you've known for years, going back to when your days covering Brentford. But again, the story just keeps on delivering for Bromley. Some of their fans, I imagine, watching them back in the Isthmian Prem all those years ago. I remember going to their playoff final against AFC Wimbledon one time, which they won, which sort of got them start moving up the period. But we can't believe they're going to Barnsley on the opening game in League One and coming away with a 1-0 win. Just incredible. Yeah,
it looked as though they sort of rode their luck a little bit, and I think there was lots of compliments for the goalkeeper Shamal George. So they expect to go there to Barnsley and have to weather a bit of a storm. I think I was reading something Andy was saying about the best bit of advice he ever got from a former manager when he became a manager was get clean sheets. So it sounds quite an obvious thing to say. It's not necessarily that easy to do. So for them to go to Barnsley, win 1-0, classic away performance, fabulous start for them, and just give them that little bit of confidence going into the season that they will be able to cope in that division. I think Andy's quite a shrewd character. He doesn't ask people to do stuff that they can't do. He keeps it simple and makes sure he gets the best out of his players, and everyone knows their jobs and exactly what they've got to do.
I think the worry, if you're a Bromley fan, you don't want them to do too well, do you? Because I think it's getting to the point now where people will probably start looking at Woodman, won't they? If they have a flying start of the season and end up in the top half, you do wonder whether there'll be eyes on it.
Should be anyway, probably, shouldn't they? Really?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it's surely reaching that point now.
Yeah. There's going to be an offer that comes in that's too much.
He's had two promotions, hasn't he? He's had two promotions. They've had an FA Trophy final win against Wrexham as well, didn't they? So he's had an extended sort of period of success there,
and of progression as well. They kind of went into the playoffs, and they got a bit further, and then they got on the trophy, and then they've kind of always been, improving year on year. Yeah, to be honest, it should have happened already by now, probably, really. But there were back in the day. I think Gillingham came in for him. I think he turned them down, and so people have been trying to get him in the past, but.
Yeah, and he stayed loyal to Bromley, and I think he's he's been quite sort of open about the fact he's got a very good relationship there with the chairman, and he felt he could sort of take them onwards and upwards, and he felt that it was a really good project, and he's shown that he was right to sort of have that faith. So it's kind of worked both ways, but you do sort of you wouldn't be surprised if some clubs started to take notice of the results that he's had over the years, because it's this has gone on for about 5 years now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Chris, for all your 4-3s on the opening day and those sort of kind of crazy games, there's something beautiful about a 1-0 away win, isn't there, in football? I think it's kind of one of the most beautiful sort of score lines in football. I remember years ago going to Cambridge United against Luton at Kenilworth Road, and Cambridge United doing a 1-0 sort of proper job, and it was it's kind of sort of like something brilliant about it.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I grew up a Newcastle fan. Yeah, I grew up a Newcastle fan under Keegan, so I wouldn't really know what one is.
Yeah, you don't agree. Boring. Well, I wasn't born at Cambridge United. They had a crazy game as well, John, didn't they? Cambridge, they're coming up obviously last year with Bromley, 3-0 up against Wigan. I'm sort of boiling that up and put Kellen Watts in my fantasy team like I pretty much did most weeks last year, and he goes and scores quite early on. They're 3-0 up, they're cruising against Wigan, and then gets back to 3-2, and it's kind of all a bit hairy, scary. I don't think Neil Harris was too happy afterwards with the how interesting they made it, but a good win all the same for the U's on the opening day.
Yeah, and it's great for them to get off the mark as well with that victory. But as you said, Neil Harris was kind of fuming afterwards, because he knew that they kind of almost sort of thrown it away there by sort of letting Wigan sort of back into the match and what have you. So he was quite open after the game and vociferous in saying that they can't allow that to happen, and and players must be prepared to play for the 90 minutes or they won't be there. So Neil's been around, he's got the experience, he won't be taking any nonsense. He won't take any nonsense there.
Yeah. There's a man who loves a 1-0. I don't know how many he got last year, but it's got to be a league.
There was a lot. I've got I think managers quite like those sort of games at the start of the season when they lose, but they still have like a bit of a nightmare in the sort of in that way the team gets back in, because it just gives them their whole sort of analysis for the week. They can get them in, they can really get into the players and drill sort of drill into them that they can't. If you go and win 3-0, it's all happy days, isn't it? You don't want that at the start of the season. You need sort of a bit of doom early on to sort of keep the players on their toes. Don't want them getting ahead of themselves. We obviously Sheffield Wednesday, their win against Leyton Orient. Callum Slattery scoring the goal of the season with his backside, charging down Nathan Baxter's kick. I think again, not the prettiest of games at Brisbane Road, but Sheffield Wednesday winning to begin this new era with 3 points, already on more points than they were last season. Stockport, I think Chris, we talked about Plymouth last week, didn't we? And bigged them up a bit, and then they were on the end of an opening day hammering to Stockport, found themselves 3-0 down as well. Got a consolation, but good start for Stockport for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Well, especially when you I think probably it was reasonable to expect a bit of a transition period, because they had Dave Chandler in charge for so long, and Jimmy McNulty's gone in there, and I think it was reasonable to think, well, it might take a little bit of a while to find the feet and get used to, but no, they seem in excellent fettle. Plymouth, the last thing they need is a bad start, and after last year, they put so much groundwork in last year after that terrible start to sort of turn themselves around. I imagine it was a bullet 1.1 was good start.
Good start, please.
So that was it. I imagine Cleverly will be fuming about that.
John, talking about Jimmy McNulty there, obviously he left Rochdale, so we're coming to League Two now, and that was their big welcome back to the EFL, was a 3-0 defeat at Newport. I think that's kind of the sobering wake-up call, I guess, sometimes that you get after promotion into the Football League.
Yeah, and obviously for Rochdale, obviously for Ian Watson, the new manager, obviously it was his first game in charge, his first game in the EFL. So, it was on paper, a fairly tricky game, go go to Newport sort of first day. They probably would have preferred to have had a home game first day, and to go and lose there 3-0 was a bit of a wake up call. And I saw some quotes from Ian Watson afterwards, and he was sort of saying pretty much that he doesn't want his team to be a soft team in League Two, because if they are a soft team, they'll get eaten up. So he's fully aware, and he knows obviously that wasn't good enough last week. So they've got a chance to put that right this week, and I'm sure they'll be working hard. But just in terms of Newport, and what a great start for Hayden Mullins, his first game in charge in the league, and great win for them. I think I read something saying that it was last season it took until the end of December for them to get their first home win. So and also a great story, that one we followed in the non-league paper last season, with Shaquille Gwenge. 47 goals, I think it was, for Poole Town last season. Got his move to Newport this summer, and for him to score, on his Football League debut, what a day for him. And I know from talking to Pat Sirachi, one of the Poole Town managers, who had him there last season, they made him the main man up front and believed in him, and he rewarded them. And I think Pat was saying to me that he fully deserved it, because Shaq had worked so hard during the season. No one had put more effort in him, and he's in his mid-20s. He's really served his apprenticeship in non-league. So great to see him get a chance in the Football League, and he can now say he's scored in the Football League as well.
Yeah, definitely. Chris, there's sort of signings like that, and we've sort of seen so many of them down the years, and we've covered them sort of with our non-league paper hats on as well. And you see how many goal scorers there are in non-league, and the ones that get a chance and kind of can go on and thrive. They kind of sort of no-brainer gambles in sort of inverted commas, because you don't always know what you're going to get. But if someone's putting the ball in the back of a net 47 times, which was the most of any player in the sort of top 4 tiers of the whole of non-league football last year, he scored more than anybody, John, didn't he? He came to our awards and picked up his Golden Boot award. But to step up 3 leagues, if the goal's the same size, isn't it? If you can, it's no different in the Football League. Obviously, the quality is obviously much better, and he's going to have to find that consistency. But their chance is worth taking, surely.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the perfect example of, especially in this case, is Charlie Austin, isn't it? Because he came from the same club. He was at Poole Town as well back in the day, and he stepped up to Swindon, and look what he became. He became a Premier League player. Now, I'm not saying Gwenge is going to do that, but it just shows you that if you especially if they go, why wouldn't you take a chance on a player if you've just scored 40 goals? You're going to think you can play for England. Like, your confidence is going to be through the roof. So why wouldn't you take a chance on someone at that point in their career and go, right, try to just step them straight in and say, right, there you go, because they're going to be full of belief. And I just think it is one of those things. So much of it's mental. Obviously it's technique, it's pace, it's skill, it's all those things. But I think so much of being a striker is in your head, and having the confidence and the composure to put the ball in the net. And if you can do that, at that level, you could probably do it at a high level as well. Again, we've spoken about Ollie Pearce a lot, haven't we, at York, and the way he sort of stepped up to the National League after spending most of his career lower down, and top scorer 2 years running. Now he's playing in the Football League. I just think, if you've got that sort of, I mean, as an amateur player, it's the opposite to what I am in front of goal. I'll see a goal and I just collapse. When it's that sort of.
You get smaller as you get closer.
Yeah. It's just, just makes us want to punt it in about 30 yards over the bar. But
what you do.
When I watch strikers, I'm full of admiration for the way they just sort of, calm down and put the ball in the net.
Well, I think so. So you saying with Will Lankshear earlier, those goals, they did come from about 3 yards combined total. But you've got to have to get there and be there in the right place. Doesn't just happen by accident.
Yeah, exactly. And that's it, isn't it? It's being in the right place. It doesn't matter what level you're at. It's just knowing where the ball's going to drop, what's going to happen.
Yeah, definitely. I think Charlie Austin is still pleased to hold the Poole Town record. I think Gwenge was 1 goal off him And I saw Charlie Austin tweet about it around the time of, have I still got the record? Which, because Paul went into the playoffs and they lost in the semi-final. So I think he was could have had one more game. I think he would have taken the record off him. But there we go. Charlie Austin still reigns supreme down at the Dolphins. Let's talk about York, because again, it was one of our big topics of conversation in last week's episode. Talked about the big change at the summer, Stuart Maynard moving on, Scott Lindsay coming in, fans not being very happy. What a difficult game they had against Bristol Rovers on the opening day, one you wouldn't really want, needed to get off to a good start. And Chris, they did. 3-2 win against Bristol Rovers. Harry Boy's new signing from Southend, who was outstanding for them last year, didn't score loads of goals, but managed to get himself to 2 for his new club. I mean, that was, if we're ever writing about something neat, a good time for a win, one that was needed, that would definitely be it for Scott Lindsay.
Yeah, he did. He needed that. I mean, like I said, not many managers have the crowd on the back after one game, so he needed it. He did need that win, and yeah, I mean, they played really well. When I was watching them, it looked like the York of last season. They were really incisive. They were sort of flashing balls across the box. They were low over, like getting piles of men forward. And yeah, I think the core Bristol Rovers out. I still, like we said sort of several times on this episode already, it's early days in the season. I still think Bristol Rovers will come good, but yeah, I mean, great signs for York. We know they've got the players. That's the thing. It's really how this manager thing sort of plays out, because you look at their squad, you look at the goals they've got in it. There's a reason people had them amongst the favourites for promotion before the season. It's just whether they can sort of put it all together, but that was certainly promising early signs.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, you would have slept a lot better on Saturday night, I imagine. Another team we talked about last week again, maybe we all fancy them, Salford City. Early days, but a great win for Barnet up against Salford, 3-1. Not a great day for Salford City, and all that kind of hope, expectation that kind of can kind of get blown away on the opening day, and that certainly happened for them.
Yeah, well, that was certainly a wake up call. But to be honest, I mean, Barnet are up there in the in the list of the favourites for the division as well. So it did have the makings of a bit of a banana skin, and obviously that was the way it turned out. So you've got to give a lot of credit to Dean Brennan and his team, because they've obviously done a job on Salford there, and it's going to be interesting now to see how Salford react, because I think it was funny, we had a lot of people sort of saying it was going to be Salford and Bristol Rovers for League Two, and nearly everyone else seems to be written off. So and then it also had the turn of events where they both ended up losing at the weekend. So it's maybe just makes it a little bit more interesting. But obviously both of those teams have got sort of quality players. So they both had tricky away games. So I mean, no doubt they'll be looking forward to getting back to home turf this week.
I do fancy Barnet though. I mean, I think they're one of those sides, a bit like Bromley last year. They've got that continuity aspect, haven't they? You look at the players. The squad's very similar to last year. It's just been tweaked and honed and tightened up, and they've got sort of all that momentum and confidence, and they've been kind of grown as a team for 3 or 4 years. I think if you definitely a dark horse for the title, in my opinion.
Yeah, I also think they got Dean Brennan. They got someone who knows exactly what he wants, haven't they, John? He knows how he wants his team to play. He's been around the block and around it again. In managerial terms, even though he's still sort of in his 40s, he's been doing it a long old time. So he sort of gives him that bit of X factor as well, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think we did notice a year ago there was quite a bit of a transformation in the squad. After they won the National Leagues. I think this season, this summer now, he hasn't had to tweak it quite as much. I don't think so. That sort of continuity, will sort of help them. There's obviously been other clubs who've had probably bigger overall sort of changes in their squads. So Barnet looks sort of they weren't far off the playoffs last year. I think they just missed them, didn't they? So you've got that, and the fact that had that season in the league now. They've had a look. Dean Brennan's had a look because obviously Dean had spent obviously his time in non-league football and knew non-league football like the back of the hand. So he's got a year of football league experience now. They've got some good players there. They've got some goal scorers like Kabongo Shamanga's been around a while now, hasn't he? But he obviously was on the score sheet at the weekend as well. And so things are kind of looking fairly rosy at the Hive.
I think the one thing you would say about Salford, we spoke last week, didn't we, about how the manager's a bit of a sort of Ange Postecoglou disciple, and they looked quite open in that game. I mean, I think Brennan himself said he thought it should have been 4 or 5, and I mean there were sort of there was very big gaps in that team. So I think it's definitely a system that needs work.
Yeah,
it could be a bit of a maybe a Russell Martin one where they're going to have, it's going to take him a bit of time to adapt to the style that he wants to play. So it might be, it could be a good time to catch them now while they're still sort of bedding in, really.
Yeah. Do you think that's Chris, is that kind of a concern sometimes when it does take time? Because do you think on League Two, because of there's 3 automatic, the playoffs are so sort of kind of tend to be so wide open that you kind of can afford more to have that time to sort of bed things in? Sometimes in other leagues you sort of see it where if you have a bad start, that's it, game over. You're playing catch up and you're never going to get back there. But can you afford it a little bit more in League Two? I don't know.
I think maybe League One as well, because League One, no one, there's not much consistency beyond the sort of top 2 or 3 teams usually. So I think if you look at Plymouth last year, right? I mean, they went from bottom to 6th. So I think you can. The problem is it's just it depends who the club is, doesn't it? And if it's Salford, they're not known for showing a massive amount of patience with people. So I think you're not gonna want to spend too long getting it right.
Cool, crack on. We talked a lot about Walsall last year, didn't we? And kind of the year before, where they looked like they were home and hosed, and starting to get all the bubbly in the fridge ready for the big promotion party, and kind of all fell apart. And then last year, just obviously sort of didn't happen again. Matt Sadler leaving. They had a good win, John, on Saturday, didn't they? 3-0 against Gillingham, and maybe they can be a little bit more under the radar this year, possibly, because there was sort of much more expectation last year after the events of the year before.
Yeah, and it's going to be quite interesting to see how Lee Grant gets on there, because it's another chance for him in the EFL to really show what he can do. It sounded as though it was kind of like quite a classic away performance where they kind of soaked up sort of quite a bit of pressure, especially maybe first half, but then second half they've hit the Gills with a late flurry of goals. I think Lee was at Huddersfield before, wasn't it? And it didn't really sort of work out for him there. So this is a great opportunity at Walsall, because Walsall have been there or thereabouts, and they've sort of frustrated them not being able to get over the line. But they've got some good players there, and obviously Aaron Presley was back on the score sheet at the weekend as well, wasn't he? And on the flip side, it was a bad day for Gillingham and Gareth Ainsworth, the manager there. And I know he felt his side had played well, and then I think what frustrated him was he felt his side capitulated after they sort of let the first goal in, and then obviously it's ended up being a 3-0. It's not the start that you want at home, so they need to quickly put that right, really.
You're always worrying when a team goes under after the first goal, but that was the first opening weekend. Obviously capped off last night, wasn't it, with Cardiff and Wrexham, and that great goal by Ruben Cole at the end. It was a great strike, and sort of almost taken in deathly silence in the stadium, where everybody was sort of watching and nobody dared sort of say anything, and just sort of captivated, because it felt like a big moment. He's rattled that in to get a point for Cardiff against Wrexham. They go to Derby on Saturday. Wrexham are at home to Watford. So we mentioned that West Ham Charlton one. Those are the ones in Championship that look interesting. MK Dons Huddersfield. Leicester got Burton at home. Wimbledon looking to bounce back from their defeat to Huddersfield against Reading. Luton, Notts County. Sheffield Wednesday, Bradford City's on Thursday night this week. That sort of starts this next round of fixtures. And in the Football League, there's Rotherham York is one that sort of really sort of stands out there as well as a bit of a Yorkshire derby. So it will all be in the paper on Sunday. Chaps, we really appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us. Make sure you like and subscribe to this podcast wherever you're watching or listening, whether it's on YouTube, Apple or Spotify. Make sure you pick up a copy of the paper on Sunday or subscribe to that as well if you check out all the details you need on there. So thank you very much, John. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate your time, and we'll catch you next week.